So this was a presentation that we put together for the recent ISA conference, and you get selected depending on what it is that you want to talk about. So we put forward sonic tomography and chlorophyll fluorescence. So does everyone know what sonic tomography is and chlorophyll fluorescence?
Yes.
You do. I know you do. Yeah. So sonic tomography is a tree scan. So it gives us the ability to be able to see through a cross section of the tree and see whether there's any decay in it. The old way used to be hitting it with a hammer and seeing whether we could hear hollows and things like that. So it uses sound wave technology. So you have sensors that are put around the tree at the cross-sectional point where you think there may be a problem. And then we tap on each one individually. So if there are 12, we take one sensor off, tap on it, and the sound wave is received by the other 11. And then we put that back and we work our way around. So sound is coming through from lots of different directions, being picked up by 11 sensors each time. So when sound travels through anything, a medium, it travels at a constant speed as long as the density is consistent. So once you get decay in wood, you've got inconsistencies in the density. So the sound wave, when it hits that, it alters speed. And then it has to find a way around it. And it either goes up over it, across it, or around it. And those are the three ways that wood is laid down: axially, radially, and transversely. So interestingly, when you go for a scan, hopefully you don't have to at the hospital, that is the exact same way that the scan is used on your body, because your body's tissues are laid down three different ways.
Seven.
Yeah, without nails. I can't remember what they're called medically, but it's the same as axially, transversely, and radially. So it's interesting. Your body is laid down the same way that wood is. So in that way, we can tell where the rot is and where it's moving. And what we will then do is, if we find areas of rot, it doesn't necessarily mean to say that it's terminal, and we leave the scanning points in and we come back in subsequent years. And then we go through the same scanning points, and then we're able to put one over the top of the baseline, and then we can tell how quickly or not that decay is moving. And more sort of poignantly, whereabouts in the tree's trunk it's losing decay, or it's got decay and it's losing woody material. So I'm going to try this now. So yeah, we don't need that. So that was one of the first trees we actually did here. So we've been doing this about 13 years over here now. And we brought it in to use in the field in our everyday business for your trees and everyone else's. And then my frustration was really that these instruments, I mean, they're not particularly cheap, but they were the only place that they exist are normally in teaching environments, colleges and universities. And the professors do a lot of research with them that have them, but that's where it tends to stay. So I wanted to use this in our business on a day-to-day basis. So arguably, we probably have the largest database on trees in the open environment and the things that naturally affect them rather than set trees in canvases. What's that? Sorry. Okay. Right. So that's a stock photograph produced really to show what these colours in the scan mean. So black is the densest wood, green is next, then magenta, and then this blue is the least structurally sound wood. So if you put that over, then the tree was cut down, and then you have to put this over the top of that. And you can see what that blue area looks like, or the green. There's actually the green area there. So these are areas of compartmentalization. which means that areas that the tree is trying to lock the cell walls together to stop the pathogen progressing through it, if that makes sense. Okay.
Guess what? It doesn't work on the TV.
No, but I'm okay. Look, I've got this.
I have a brand new.
Oh, it doesn't work on it.
It doesn't.
Well, it works on the surround, but not.
Yeah,
not the
this
image.
is like a TV versus.
Oh, as opposed to a
Yeah.
screen.
Yeah, this is so just, I have a brand new one and okay.
So,
Come on, sorry.
okay, right. So do you know, do you learn about tension wood and compression wood and the differences?
Yeah.
Okay. So, when cells are made in trees and plants, you've got two main component parts in the cell walls. One of them is cellulose, and the other part is lignin. Lignin was a product that was developed by plants about 400 million years ago, which enabled them to have strength and be able to stand above the ground and compete for light. So without lignin, we wouldn't have trees. So lignin is a very, very strong compound, and it's basically what we call a compression material. So it resists compression, which is why things can be built. The cellulose is a tension material. So it will bend and it will resist breaking. So the tension side of a tree, so when you have a tree leaning, you will find that it puts a lot of biomass on the outside of the trunk. You'll see like a big knob running down it. That's a tension material. And on the underside, you've got the compression material. So compression material is only half as strong as tension wood. So if this tree, we've taken a scan here, if this was the side that it was leaning into, this would be the tension material here. And this would be, sorry, this would be the compression material. And the backside here would be the tension material. So we'd look at it and think, well, it's still got a good amount of tension material on the backside there with the root flares. So it may not be such a big problem at the moment. Now, if the tree was leaning the other way, so going that way, this would be the tension side and this would be the compression side. So although the compression side has got more material, it's actually lost a lot of the tension material, the strength of the tree. And that's when they come over. So depending on how this tree is standing above ground, which way it's leaning or which way the pressure from the limbs is loaded onto the trunk base will determine whether something like this is an immediate problem or not. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Right. So the other part that we look at is chlorophyll fluorescence. So don't try and understand that. Broadly speaking, when you've got a green leaf, that's the chlorophyll in the leaf. That's the photosynthetic cells sit in that. And it uses red light out of the light spectrum. That's the only light it uses. So when nutrients go up into that area, into the leaf area, and red light hits it, it causes a very excited reaction. And then that has to be brought back into a sensible level playing field before it's pushed on to the photosynthetic cell that makes energy. What we measure with chlorophyll fluorescence is how efficiently the chloroplast uses that red light. Because without red light, you can't have that photosynthetic process. And that's why when you go up north, you get towards the end of the year or the autumn where light is lower in the sky and then the leaves turn color. So the chlorophyll dies off, is no longer photosynthesizing, and you're seeing the natural tanning colors of the leaf, the reds, the oranges, all these types of things. So what we do is we measure how efficiently that red light's being used. And that is a direct physiological marker as to how healthy physiologically the tree is. You know, how well it can make nutrients. Because if it's not using that red light well, then it can't make as much nutrient and it can't provide the tree's needs. So it's a pretty vital component. So when people ask, you know, is my tree healthy? There are two parts. There's this part, the physiological part, and there's that part, the structural part. So does anyone know, if you look at an oak tree, what percentage of an oak tree, a mature oak tree, or at any stage actually, what percentage is live material? So the physiologically live material, and what percentage is dead? Does anyone want to have a guess? Sorry? That's very good. Yeah, about 97%. Yeah, only 3% of it is physiologically alive. So if we go back to this, you see this line here. So this is the current vascular system here. So the inner part of it is the xylem. That takes all the nutrient up from the ground for the root system. This might look the thing, oh yeah. The inside part of it is the phloem, and that brings all the energy that's processed down the other side of that little line. And then it goes into growing this part here, the periderm, which then grows the bark layer. And some of it is stored in these rays here for energy that the tree uses for other things later on. But from approximately here, all the way across to approximately here is dead. So you know these rings that you count for each year's growth? These were the previous year's vascular system, which is now here. And they are just hard, empty structural cylinders. So when you get decay, it's taken away that hard structural material. But it doesn't mean to say the tree's dead, because that material was already dead. This is the live part here.
Does the live part know when a tree is starting to shift, like you have an old oak tree and all of a sudden the ground changes and starts to shift? Would the tension material increase on the outside after it's already full grown?
Yes, so you will actually see those changes more in a very mature tree. You start to see ridges and light and bulky areas. And, you know, we use that to tell us how the tree's forces are being applied around the tree structure, because the tree will react to those forces and it will lay down biomass to hold itself. Yeah, I mean, it is truly. So it takes about 3,000 pounds of soil solution to make 1 pound of biomass. So that in a reasonable size oak, that can be 10 days of complete nutrient flow up through this area here that the tree needs for all its physiological needs. And now some tree surgeon or arborist come along and cut lots of limbs off. It's now got to, from here, create biomass to try and heal this cross section, which it will never do. And that's only 1 pound. It's 10 days of entire nutrient flow. So when you start taking off large limbs and do lots of pruning, it puts the tree under a lot of stress. But as you say, as trees start to move, they will grow compensating material. And it's a process called thigmomorphogenesis. Yeah, there you go. So it's got some Greek in it, but basically a tree responds or changes its shape in response to touch. Touch is light and air, so wind, and where the light is. So the primary objective of any plant is to capture light, and it will allocate its resources primarily for that, bar nothing else. Because if it can't capture light, it can't live. That's how it makes food. And then when wind is affecting it, the tree is getting moved by those outer limbs. So a tree goes to the gym every day. So as it flexes, it will increase the taper on those limbs, but it will also increase the holding material where those branches are attached to the limbs and where the limbs are attached to the trunk. So when you go to plant trees and you stick it in the ground, and you see them with that cane stuck up the middle of the trunk, it's no good, because the cane is the strength. The tree's going to grow genetically upwards, but it has no flexion. And if it doesn't have flexion, the trunk can't build taper. And it primarily will start building taper at the ground level, because that's where the root system has to develop. So you really should be, if the tree's here, I use typically 3 stakes, 2, and then you put a line that is flexible to the tree, so that it has the ability to start moving, but not to the failure point. And that has to go not 2/3 of the way up, but no more than half, maybe just under, because that top fluffy part with the leaves has to be able to move, because that's the thing then that moves the stem. So leafage on a tree is vital to create that strength in a tree. So after a hurricane, you have all those leaves on the ground that you've got to rake up. So a tree is built to withstand these types of winds. After about 90 miles an hour, it will release the leaf at the petiole, so there's no more drag. All there is structure. And if you look at the way trees are pruned and canopies are opened up, you let wind in to the inside of the canopy. And if you look at your leaf on there, so the underside of it, if you look at the inside of it, is cupped downwards. Yeah? So there's a reason for that. So on the outside, because it's folded over, wind sheds down and off of it. And as it gets stronger, yeah, I've got my visual aid. So as wind passes over this leaf down the canopy, it will curl. And when it curls, it becomes aerodynamic. And it shifts weight very efficiently. So when you have pinnite and you have lots of leaves in a line, you will find that they flop down over each other and they make one long tube. If you allow wind in the inside of the canopy, it hits the inside, which is slightly cupped, and that causes a lot of pressure. That doesn't get rid of wind. It causes pressure inside the canopy and against limbs and branches. You're looking at me thinking, I'll give you a plant back.
But then the limbs and branches break off.
Yes. So a tree never grows anything it doesn't need, or a plant, ever. Why would it? So before we start messing around with it, you've got to really understand why you're pruning or taking it off. Now, when you're pruning bushes, you're pruning to get a lot more growth. So you make one cut and cut one piece off, you're going to get 3 or 4 that come out of that, which gives you a fuller bush. But if you do that to a 70-foot tree, you're increasing its loading by 5 on every cut that you make, and it's growing at angles that it didn't design. And I'll tell you a little fact, actually, that I found last week. We were up in Montana working, and I was reading, and I was actually, it was a very good way of putting it. So everyone's worried about the huge height of these trees next to their buildings, and look at the size of these limbs, it's going to take the tree over. So with an oak, and most broadleaf trees down here, a cubic foot of wood, 1 by 1 by 1, weighs about 70 pounds. And every 4 foot that travels, it quadruples its weight. So you've got 1/8 of a ton of moving force for every cubic foot. And you look at it and you think there's no way that limb is going to stay on there, or that whole tree is going to come over, or half of it in the store. But actually, the way that a tree is designed for gravity to actually have a dramatic effect on that tree and enact failure, that tree would have to be about 10 kilometers in height. Wood is that strong, and the way the joints are laid down. And it's very hard to convince people that, you know, these big trees next to their houses are not going to come down. Because any tree can come down. And especially if you get a lot of water and the plates become waterlogged and you're on sand. But all things equal, a tree has designed itself over 400 million years to change the Earth's environment to eventually allow us to be able to survive in the air. But it has survived and changed all the way over. I'm going massively off topic now, but tell me if you get bored. So, you know, trees and plants produce lots of hormones for different things, different processes all the time. An oak tree has about 2,000 different hormone groups in it. It will produce a hormone or hormones plural for certain jobs. If there's excess hormone left over, it has the ability to cannibalize that hormone and take it back into its system. So it's a bit like if you make a shepherd's pie. It's my favourite. And Kelly makes a great one. So she makes a shepherd's pie, and then I have half of it. I know. And then the other half you've got to put in the fridge and put something over it, and you've got to eat it within a day. But it would be similar to taking that half you haven't eaten and taking the meat out of it and putting it back into its original form before you cooked it, taking a potato and putting it back into a potato form. That's what a tree can do with resource that it doesn't use. Yeah, I know. So when you see things like this, it's not a point at which you panic. This is a heart rot. This has been going on for decades. Just because you've now got the call and we put the machine on it and we can see it, it's not like it's going to fall over in a week. So it's a long process.
Question.
Yes.
The leaves on the tree will withstand up to 70-mile-an-hour winds,
90.
or up to 90-mile-an-hour winds.
Yeah, the outer canopy, as long as it's intact properly, is designed to deflect wind up to about 45 miles an hour.
So Houston, that just went through a hurricane, if the wind stayed below 90, the trees would not have even lost a leaf.
Technically, no. I mean, some of them will shed. And the tree will register that movement and that stress on the petiole, and it will release it. But once you get above 90 miles an hour, they're going to be stripped. Yeah. Otherwise, if you think about it logically, you wouldn't have any trees left down here. I mean, how do they get to 200-300 years old? I mean, how many hurricanes and changes? And then you put buildings next to them, and wind loading is coming and changing and altering the structure, but they're still there. But then you sell your house to someone from, I mustn't say that. Yeah, and they want to take all the trees down because they're scared of them.
Oh.
And so we spend our lives going around seeing people and persuade them not to do any work on their trees. So I know everyone says, so how do you make money? Every tree in an urban environment needs a little touch, but it's a little touch. And sometimes not at the point when the client thinks it needs touch. So this was an RV parking lot, lovely old live oaks there. And you can see that they've had bits and pieces taken off because they put vans underneath them. When I look at an old tree like this in an area, I'm always a little bit suspicious as to what's going on in the ground. And when you stress a tree and you take a lot of material away from it and it can't make that biomass, then it's like you, when you run yourself down, there's all sorts of things that want to get in you. So we took a scan of it, and that's the scan. So it's not good. So, unfortunately, this tree, was removed because that is an awful lot of material that's disappeared. It's already broken through a large part of the active vascular system. Once a heart rot reaches oxygenated areas, it becomes a brown or a white rot. The white rot will degrade the compression material, which is the lignin, and a brown rot will degrade the tension material, which is cellulose. So as a guy, I know what you mean. You know what I mean. If you see, does anyone know what rebar is before they pour concrete? Okay. So you know the uprights, that's really like cellulose, and then they put bands around it, and that's the lignin. So if you lose the lignin, then the rebar is going to bend and sway more. That's exactly what happens with a tree. And sometimes then you get that amount of movement, which is unnatural for the tree, and that can produce forces in the joint that cause problems. If you lose the cellulose, which is the uprights, you're just left with all these bands. And I don't know if you've ever seen decayed wood, it all looks blocky. That's where you've had a brown rot that's taken the cellulose away, eaten that away, and left the lignin. So anyway, yes, unfortunately that tree was removed.
Do you take them down just for the aesthetic looks of it? Because wouldn't planet Earth be better off if we let things die naturally?
We would, but unfortunately humans don't want to live in the ground anymore. So they want to live in houses. And that's the problem. It's very hard, I think, when you're living in a house and you're on a tree board and you want to stop development. Because at some point, your house is sitting somewhere that was developed. And whether we like it or not, the population is increasing because we don't like mortality. So we'll take any pill or any medication to keep us going for as long as we possibly can.
You're right, we don't like mortality.
Right. So, you know, you've got an ever-increasing population. I think something like 80% of the population of the world lives on 20% of, I mean, very tiny area. But, you know, you're all crammed into one place. So I think the trick really is to try and find a better way to live in the environment rather than on top of it. I think that's the first mental challenge. Most people live on top of the environment. They don't want ants in the house. Well, none of us do, but it's too aesthetically clean. We have to get used to living in the environment and build your own environment around your house as you do in your Master Gardeners. You know how to do that. Don't worry about your neighbour. Do your bit. And the bigger developments, trees like living together closely. And not one of one yard, another one which is a hybrid of the other one and the rest of it, because they're not sustainable. Trees need to
With the trees away. That's why they take them all out.
yeah.
Why do they take it?
Because it costs too much to build around them.
Oh,
There is that, but also, you know, when you start construction work and you're removing root zones of other trees, and you know, even the ones they leave, is variable whether they're going to survive that long. In some cases, you are better once it's designated as development area to take them down, but then have another area that is designated as woodland within that subdivision that people can enjoy, because trees need root systems that join and help. So lots of people have lots of different ideas about it. Statistically, urban trees only last about 35 years, but their carbon footprint is about 40. So that clearly doesn't work.
That tree right there, if a branch fell off of it, could kill a person or take out a car.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen it happen.
But why would a branch fall off that?
Up top even.
Why? But why?
Lightning. Or just if it became unstable.
Why would it become unstable?
Ground compaction.
Split there.
previous
Said it was
printing.
dead in between.
That there is enormously strong.
Yeah.
That's enormously strong joint.
Oh, okay. I thought you
Huge.
said it's dead down to the
No, no, this is at the base.
Oh,
You need to
so what do you
explain
think
something
caused that
that is
disease?
Sorry?
What do you think caused the tree to die at the base?
The thing that caused the tree to accept fungal pathogen up in there that decayed it is a lot of the root system was cut originally. So open cuts underground are never good. These areas are then become compacted with vehicles on them. So you're closing down soil oxygenation. So the tree then starts to struggle to fight off things that always want to get in it.
Explain when you say something is the tree's dead, it's structurally sound.
Yeah.
This is wrong.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean it's not.
No, I thought I had on the other one. There. So it sort of gets into about a 6 o'clock finish on the talk if I talk too much, but everyone asks that same question: what happens if that breaks off? Well, if that hadn't been taken off there, can you see that's still trying to close up there? That would have come out over here with a canopy underneath here. So would numerous more of these, so would these. This would just be part of a much, much bigger upper canopy. But once you start taking these off, you're subjecting these inner parts to wind loading that the tree never designed them for. So once you start cutting, yeah, you are going to expose the canopy to different forces.
What is the flag for most owners called to say, you know, we're looking at that tree and it looks pretty on the top part. Why did they think that there was something wrong? Was it that they could see the decay by the ground or?
Yeah, or they've got a friend or a neighbor that had a tree fall over in the latest wind or whatever. And then, to be honest with you, what you need to do is you need to, once a year, you need to have the trees visibly checked by an expert. And, you know, I charge to come out, not locally where I'm not really spending.
The latest trial, that's just about flexibility, choosing whether
What's he saying? How dare you charge?
Sometimes as we've seen already, there are hundreds of British companies and one local council have already shown that a 4-day week with no longer pay can be a win-win for workers and employers. But we recognise that, you know, 4-day week isn't going to happen for everyone overnight. We wanted to, you know, understand there's a roadmap to getting to the 4-day working week. So on this trial, people will be able to try different versions of a short working week over its kind of
There we go. You guys talk.
Yeah, it's obviously a very contentious point. So if you go out for a meal once a week, I know not many people do. So what are you going to spend? 2 people. Of course. But it's hard to get away less than $50, isn't it? And that's just once for 1 week. So if you're spending $90 to have an expert come round once a year to look at everything, it's not a lot of money, given what failure could mean. And often catching these things early means a little bit of pruning can take the stress out of systems like this. I mean, this is a bit different, but I would structurally reduce this tree so I got the weight lower down, so there's not as much leverage down here. But it's a bit of a contentious idea over here. We do a lot of structural reductions in Europe.
Over here, you mean across the pond?
Across the pond. So structural reduction, if you think of a balloon and you let the air out the balloon, it shrinks all the way around. It's not just cutting one piece off here. You have to touch every single part of the canopy in the same way. So you reduce it so the loading relationships stay the same the way the tree had grown. So it takes a lot. And you're cutting into cross sections of wood that are dead. And the tree can't heal those. So you are inducing early decay. So when you wait to have work like that done, then you're putting early decay into the tree. If you'd done it earlier, then you wouldn't be coming across such big cross sections, and it's got more of a chance to heal. So it's always better to be proactive with tree care and have them inspected, because you know you're not supposed to be an expert, and hopefully that's what we're supposed to be.
You mean compartmentalize instead of heal? Semantics, right?
Yeah. Yeah, Sally obviously is absolutely right. So the peanut gallery. So yeah, a tree can't heal itself. It compartmentalizes. But when you go and buy a wooden table, if it was all just the same color, it's not worth as much, or it hasn't got as big a price tag on as it has these black areas. And yes, those are all previous injuries that have since been covered up. So it goes to show that, I mean, a tree will cover those up depending on where it is. I mean, on the trunk, actually, it's easier because the trunk is the fastest growing part of a tree. So, you know, you injure the part of it, it will eventually close that over. And then you can pay lots of money for the tree from it. So chlorophyll fluorescence. So what we do is we take a sample of just 20 leaves from anywhere in the tree. When this was originally developed, they took 20 leaves from every limb, every meter, and tested them, and they all tested the same. So we know that a tree physiologically controls every single leaf on its canopy at the same rate. So when you see a tree and the whole canopy goes brown, you know that that is the root system that is controlling that. So something has changed in the ground for the tree. When you see spot areas of a canopy going brown, that normally is typically here, it tends to be chemical that's being taken up, that's put on lawns, or it can be an outside vector, beetle or something like that, that's affected that particular part. But when you get whole sections of the canopy, that is the root system controlling it, that's what you have to look at. So what we do is we take 20 leaves and there's a little clip and we put it on the leaf, and then there's a little aperture which we close. So we light darken that leaf for about 45 minutes. And then we take the reader, put it over the top of the aperture, open the aperture, and we press and we get a 1 second burst of red light. So that mimics red light being absorbed by the chloroplast. And it will tell us how efficiently then that red light is being absorbed into the cells for photosynthetic process. So what we want to see, this is taken from this tree. So bear in mind, I showed you structural health. So this is physiological health. So what it's showing us here is the leaves are reading 83s, 84s. That is right at the top of the spectrum that we are expecting in an oak tree, given what we test in the field. That's right up there. And you can see that this is at the point at which the aperture was open, the red light was put in, and they've all gone, wow, look at that, right up to the top. Great. So physiologically, that oak tree is spot on. Its vascular system is working great. It's getting everything it needs out of the ground in the right quantities. It's got the right amount of water to take that up. But unfortunately, it hasn't got any feet. Do you see? So sometimes if that rot wasn't as pronounced as that, and we got that type of reading, then we look at what we think the tree's ability is, because the trunk is the fastest growing part of the tree. Can the perimeter part of that outgrow the spread of the internal decay and keep the relationships the same? And one of the indicators is this. because if it has a physiological advantage right at the top end of the spectrum, it can create the maximum amount of biomass that it needs to put that girth on. And that's why we come back on the second year and we test again. So if it hasn't spread much and we're getting these types of readings, then we're going to leave it alone. Let me go the other way. That's it. Okay. So this is an interesting tree. So it's a laurel oak, and I don't know who that is. So it has this cavity in the middle here, and the owner was concerned about it and wanted us to test it because this whole half here went all the way over the house. This half was in the yard, so that wasn't so much of an issue. So we scanned it in 2017, and this is down through that centre part, and you can see that it's got pockets either side where that water and debris is collected in that union and moved down. But you know, nothing particularly to worry about. Can keep an eye on. So we came back again in 2019, and can you see what's happened? No, it's moved out through that wood to the vascular system. That changes from a heart rot to a brown or a white rot and accelerates the decay process. And then we did it at 3 levels, and you can see how that moves down through the joint diagonally. Do you see that? There is no operation. Okay.
What's the distance of those 3 levels?
From there down to there. So you just see one of the tags there. Another one was taken there, and another one was taken at this level here. So that's the distance. So it's pretty significant. If you look at the way that this tree is lined up at a diagonal, that's why that decay is moving diagonally. Now, if we go back to what I mentioned earlier about tension and compression wood, this is the tension wood on this side here, because the tree is leaning that way, that side. Once you lose a certain amount here, that tree is going to separate itself. Have you seen those limbs that come away from the tree and the top part is black and the rest is healthy? That black is decay that's been trying to get in, and the tree has compartmentalized it to try and stop it progressing. And to do that is locking the cells together so it stops any type of flow to make interlocking holding material. So it separates. Oh, what have I done?
That tree was tired and wanted to turn off,
Oh.
and it doesn't give you any option to not do it.
Yeah.
It was depressed. Talking about that poor tree, and it got so sad, it just went.
Okay, so let's have a look. So what we actually elected to do with that one, we reduced all of this side here. First of all, took the leverage out of the top on the first grab, and then we came back finally and we took it down to just about above this level here. So that takes all the danger out of it, and the tree stays. So she keeps her tree, roof safe, job done.
Does he grow another canopy up?
Yeah, well, it will possibly, out of that vascular system, grow more shoots coming out of where we cut, yes. Keep moving this the wrong way. This was another tree. This was in Canaveral, and the guy or the owner that owned this parking lot and these properties said the tree was unsafe and he wanted it removed. But thankfully, Canaveral have a tree code, and I know the arborist there, city arborist, so he called me to put a tree scan on it. So they were worried about this, which is nothing to worry about. It's just hypoxylon canker, but this area here and this old wound was incorrectly cut into the wood. So we scanned it. There we go. So that was the top part, top, middle and bottom. And if you put them together as a column, there's some progression downwards, but it's still isolated to that center part. And there's nothing coming up from the ground there. So I suggested reducing this down, and it has some quite long outliers, and reducing all this down, which takes the pressure off that joint. And at the moment, they haven't given him permission, and it's gone to the powers that be at the council. So I don't know what the final outcome of that is, but that's how we use the scans. Interestingly, is that right? So chlorophyll fluorescence. So you saw how that previous one all went up there. This was a magnolia, and metsulfur methyl was the culprit on this one. So by the time we were asked to come in, bear in mind these figures here should be in the 80s. Look at those numbers. And look at the leaf separation. I mean, some of them are just flatlining. They're just not capable of using red light. That's what metsulfurin does, metsulfur methyl. This had gone too far, and the magnolia was not coming back from this. Now, I got a call recently, this magnolia, and she said it's losing a lot of leafage. So I asked for the spray ticket, and metsulfur methyl is used. So here we have numbers in the 70s, and you can see the leaf distribution and how separated it's becoming, and it's pretty plain to see. Now, she got two other magnolias on the property, so I thought I'd test those, because they didn't look as bad. This one here, but the leaves are getting pretty pale, but can you see they're still up in the 80s? And it's not a bad collection. They need to be up here more. So this is showing definite signs of stress, but given the other two examples, then take the chemical applications off of the ground, and you'll probably find that this will have enough in reserve, in resources, to be able to kick that chemical off and recover. And then the one down the side of the house, this one here, 80s, and much better progression. Now, there's metsulfur methyl put all on the yard, but this is a sloping yard. So it's not taking as much as a flat slope. So it's washing away from the root system after they put it on. So that's why the figures are much better. But so that is part of your tree healthcare checking, those types of things. And this is a pretty innocuous and I would say inexpensive test, really. And you're going to know straight away whether you've got problems with the tree functioning physiologically. Yeah, we soil tested this as well. So
Did you test it for the MSN?
no,
No,
that's about $150 per chemical.
yeah, you have to do leaf, get the.
From you have to get the leaf, and they will test the leaf. Yeah.
Yeah, 'cause it seems like there are so many now common names of the, broadleaf herbicides that have it in there. that-
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The manor bonsai, well, a lot of it.
Mansion,
Mansion's another one.
yeah.
All they do is put it with another chemical so they can give it a proprietary name.
We got her spray ticket and she had all the above.
Yeah, I believe it.
Yeah.
And I think now, it's come out of the golf course environment and into the public domain. That's been the real acceleration of it. And now much smaller companies are able to access these chemicals where it used to just be the bigger ones.
Do you know why they created that?
Yeah, originally I understood it was a forestry division. Yeah, in the conifer stands to suppress broadleaf invasion.
Like oak trees specifically?
Yes, specifically oak trees.
Your herbicide, you kill oak trees.
Yeah, I know. It's pretty unmistakable in oak trees. It's interesting. So these are magnolias, and magnolias lose leafage. They get thinner. With oak trees, you will see you get a cluster of green leaves, and in amongst it, you get half a dozen that are brown, all off of the same ratio. And you will see that all around the canopy if you really look. And that is a typical sign of it.
Yeah, but you helped the lady in Cocoa Beach that had two oaks in her front. One was smaller, one was huge, and the one just totally brown.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah, that was one of the.
Yeah.
Was at the beginning, I think, when that was.
Yeah.
For lawns, great.
Yeah, and I mean, when the start of the subject with the ISA, when they'd done the research, we went to one conference and it was virtually every talk was on it. Yeah, I mean, it's massive.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so this was cocoa. You know where cocoa comes off the US1 and goes down to the Indian River,
Yeah.
and they redid all the road there.
Yeah.
So they've had lots of problems because now there's a ton of water moving down at much faster speeds into the root plates of these trees. This was a very old live oak, and I can't remember where they lived. This was a winter home. So it's a true live oak, but you can see just a few wounds all over the canopy. So when you have something like this close to the house, you've got to think that the original roots don't sit underneath the house. They've got to have been cut. And then you take all this lower limbs off, and especially with the neighbor as well, and you end up with like an acacia tree, and the African savanna, and it's just this canopy at the top. It works for acacia trees because convection over a canopy like that provides uplift, cool air, and that's how the leaf stays cool. That's how acacias work. But it doesn't work with these. So a lot of twist and talk. And we actually put the drone up as well to inspect the canopy because there were a couple of suspect areas. And we said, well, we're scanning it at the base, and that's what we got. This here is the northern part, which is the other side of this, and the tree is leaning this way. So it's leaning towards the south, where the sun is greater. It wants to get light, so it's going to have that aspect. So the north side, if it's leaning this way, the wood on this side here, what's that? Compression or tension? So it's compression. It's being compressed. The tissues are being compressed. So the north side are tension materials that under tension are being stretched, which is where you will find more biomass being put down. So this is the tension side. And you can see these are the cracking indicators. So there is a good amount of central cracking coming from the center of the tree. So the wood is hard splitting and is broken through the tension side. So now it will start accelerating in breaking down that tension material. So that was a removal, which is very sad. Over 100 years old, that tree. So you're looking at that and you're thinking, what does that mean? So this is really cool. So this is AI. So this is produced by a company I found in the Czech Republic. So it uses dendrology as we know it, all the loading and statistics associated with dendrology and how canopies receive and affect the stem. So what this does is, if we go back to that, what it does is by photographing the stem, it will theoretically slice the stem every 10 centimeters, 2.5 inches. Yeah. In very small increments, it will theoretically slice this trunk going up. And then by taking images of the canopy from different directions, the canopy has different shapes from different directions because of wind. It can work out how much wind force is being applied at different parts of that canopy and what that force applies as pressure every 10 centimeters down that trunk. And then it can work out the safety coefficient, the bending ability, and the percentage to it of that part of the trunk. So if we've got a decay in a certain part of the trunk, we know, well, we don't, but AI is suggesting what what the forces are that are being applied to that point. So this is megapascals. I don't know, I think it's about 140 something psi, pounds per square inch for 1 megapascal. So a coefficient, safety coefficient, we're looking for anything over 300%. So what it's telling us down here, this is the profile every 10 centimeters. So it's saying that a height from the ground of 1.5 meters. So 6 foot is, yeah. It has a safety coefficient only of 569%. So that is the weakest point, as you can see. The strongest point actually is at the ground. But because we've got that rock there, that strongest point now we know is not the strongest point. So this column is relying on the stronger part of the tree being closer to the ground. So having done the scan at the area closest to the ground and found that is actually the weakest point, that tells us it really is not good. And it tells you here, look, this is, so if we reduce the canopy size, we can increase the safety efficiency loading on the trunk because there's less mass. And it tells us. So at that weakest point there, if we reduce the whole canopy by a meter, we can over double the strength in the column at that weakest point. If we reduce it by 2 meters, we go up to just under 3 times the strength. And if we reduce it by 3 meters, we can increase it, you know, over 3 times. Because you are taking that center mass of volume that moves in the wind and applies pressure, and you're reducing it. So it's like if you're on 4th of July, you've got a big 10-foot flag and you're waving it around and there's a breeze, you're going to end up down the bottom of the street. But if it was only this size, you could wave it around as much as you like, and it's not going to drag you. It's the same with the tree. So that's what AI is telling us. Oh. So this is another tree, it's an interesting one. So trees don't know they've got neighbors. So this one here wanted to say hello to the neighbor, but the neighbor didn't like it, so he just had the top cut off. Yeah, exactly. And this one here decided the best thing, because the tree cutting industry knows best, is to clear off all the lower supporting limbs and get this canopy as high above the roof as possible, because that's safest. So you've got loss of decay, you've lost a lot of material that makes biomass and keeps naughty things from getting in from the ground, which has a really compacted root area. And that's the result of the scan there. So that's the saddle, and that is the decay running right through the middle. And this is the tension side here, tension side there, and you've got decay down through the tension side of both sides. But it's not massive. There's some starting here, and this is in the bottom of this column here. And because it had the top taken off, it's got virtually no leafage. It's got nothing to fight that. And this was the earlier scan done on it. Can you see there was only a little bit? And now there's all this. So that's what the lack of physiological ability to create biomass does. It's
2-year period?
2-year period. So it's not as able to stop the progression of this decay, because it doesn't have the vitality to produce energy to do that. Yeah. And we did the same scan on this. What it does is those are the every 10 centimeter slicing, and it will show us, the computer shows us the shape of the tree. So you can see it's a very high canopy here, and gives us the crown area details, all that sort of business, which, you know, it gets a bit boring. So here we go. So reduce it by a meter, you go up a little bit, 2 meters, you go up more. So, and this is the scan of it. So what it does is, okay, it's really cool. So I've got to stop saying that. So when we do the scan like this, we're going between all these buttress routes, trying to find a place where we can get a good transmission of signal. The thing that this doesn't take into account, so it'll tell us up here that it's 55% solid wood. The minimum we need is 30%. Now, you could get an instance where you were down to about 25%. But the problem is that what this scan doesn't take into account, if I'm going the wrong way, what this scan doesn't take into account is all this extra biomass and material the tree has got holding itself, which are really key. What this modeling does is it takes this 3D scan, it works out how all this perimeter wood that the sonic tomography hasn't got, it lays it over the top and it adds back in that material that the scan hasn't seen, because the scan is taken in these areas here to get a good shot, but it hasn't taken into account that extra biomass outside of the scanning point. So this AI can actually do that. So it gives us a much more efficient reading from the sonic tomography. So you could have a tree that was like 28% only holding material. And if you're doing the certified arborist, if anyone's listening, track report, you'd be challenged not to say that there is a good likelihood that that tree could fail. But when you add this AI interpretation of that extra biomass, that could put it up to 35%. That makes for a very different report and a different category that you're putting the tree in. What this part of it does for the tomography is this was the particular area of decay. So it shows what that tree section would have looked like if there was no decay, and it gives us the safety coefficients. And then what it does is it adds in gradually the different parts of decay until we get to the mirror of that. So that is a safety coefficient of 605%. If you put this back in as solid wood, you'd be up to 1,000. If you put this back in as solid wood, you'd be up to 1,500. I know it's a lot of numbers. The way I look at it is these types of instruments now, they're very technical. So when we do risk assessments, they're categorized in 3 different divisions. And the third one has to use advanced equipment. So if you've got significant trees that could be removed from the landscape, my argument always has been that you should be using the most advanced equipment that you can get your hands on. And now, thankfully, we're getting calls by a lot of arborists that ask us to come and do this because they can see that something's not quite right, but it's a significant tree and or the owner doesn't want it taken away. So we start doing this type of thing. It gives us a lot of information. Bear in mind, this is what the computer is analyzing and suggesting. So you still need that human that can put all those things together and decide what that's telling you. And that really is what, as I understand, really is the trick with AI. It's artificial intelligence from information that's been put in, and then it can start deducing things. But at the end of the day, it can't look up in the canopy. It can't see those biomass additions to certain parts of the canopy that the tree is used to compensate for something else, but I can. So although it may be telling me, no, this is not right, I'm looking at something else and thinking, well, on the balance, that's not as bad as that's suggesting. I'll leave that one out. So this is one of the first ones we did, and this guy's going a bit bored. But he was actually worried about a limb going over his roof, and I was looking at this more. So I thought, okay, so yeah, he's probably been eating it, hasn't he? Yeah, the chicken of the woods or whatever. So we elected to scan it just in case. I thought, well, before we do anything upstairs, we better take a look at this because it's in a swale, a lot of standing water at the wrong time of year, and that was the scan. So that's where that is that. And that's the base of it. And that was what the computer says it looks like traveling down. And then, you know, when you start using these, this is one of our earliest scans, and you think, okay, so we've got it. He says, well, what do you think? I said, well, it doesn't look good. He says, okay, well, I need to take it down. Okay. So you dismantle it, it's all solid wood above, and you come down to this last bit, and you think, I need this to be decayed. So thankfully, it was the right decision. So that's our own one going over the top of this. So it's pretty close. You can see this pocket here is this here. So these lighter colours, as you can see, doesn't necessarily mean to say there's a hole. In this case, this blue does mean there's a hole, but going back to that first stock photograph, it wasn't a hole, but they were fibres that were severely separated. So sonic tomographies don't denote that you have a hole, it's the degrees of structural integrity, blue being the least. But sometimes it does mean you have got a hole. Oh.
It was kind of cool looking though.
Yeah. Am I out of time or are we okay for a minute? Yeah, we're good, okay. Okay. Still interesting. So Winter Park in Orlando. This is a camphor tree. So it's estimated to be just over 300 years old. Yeah, it's incredible. And they've got the photographs from this thing with the original house, and it's actually unbelievable. So you see these limbs, how long they are.
It's what kind of tree?
It's a camphor.
So do you think it started the invasive?
Probably. Yeah, I mean that area around Winter Park, you just look around the properties, there are camphor everywhere. Anyway, where I am there was an enormous limb apparently that you can see where it's been taken off the tree, came right out here. And it was on the ground. And back at the join, or along here, all of a sudden it started developing a lot of rots and things like that. So they had a lot of people go out there. I think she said 18, Kerry, was it? 18 experts. And they were analysing what type of rot this was. And that was it. It was decaying and everything else. So they elected to cut it off and remove it. And then the company that looks after this tree, in the centre, I mean, it's about 15 feet in diameter. So you've got all these uprights that come out of this big saddle. But there was a huge hole down in the saddle that had been covered over from a limb that had been taken off. And I got called out because they wanted to scan this hole. But they didn't say it was 15 foot in diameter. They just said it was an old tree. So we got there and I was looking at it, I was thinking, you can't be kidding me. So I said to Kerry, I said, we're not scanning this. And the lady came out and I said, so what's the problem? She said, let me show you. So we climbed up into the saddle and she opened it and it was a big hole. The whole thing's a cavity, which obviously isn't new. I said, well, we know there's a cavity. So it's in the middle and you've got all these stems coming out. So the middle part is all the tension material holding all these stems. And there's a hole underneath it. But the top part is the saddle. So that's the tension area. And it's all completely intact. There's a hole underneath it, but all the pressure is taken by the top part. So if a limb were going to separate, when you've got decay that goes down, it takes away the top part of the tension material and then it fails. But all this was intact. It was basal rot that had come up from behind. So all those limbs are still being held. So the limb that actually they took off, Sally, have you heard the term carving?
A turkey.
There is that.
No, I haven't heard it for tree.
Okay, so there are two ways that oaks and beech and these types of trees reproduce. So their nut, their seed, and the other way is through carving. So as they get older and older, these lower limbs come out further and further and further, and they end up touching the ground. And when they touch the ground, they start rooting down. And when they root down, once they start getting water and nutrient, you will see these little adventitious growths. And then what the tree will do is start closing off it's called occlusion, closing off the cellular attachment area at the trunk. And then it will drop it. And then after a while, whilst that tree then starts growing, it will then occlude that limb from its little tree. So the limb then ends up laying on the ground between the stem and the new one, and it will break down over many years, and all that nutrient will flood into the ground and provide everything that that young tree needs. And because it's done at the furthest extent of those lower limbs, it's outside of the canopy of the bigger tree. So it has available light and its own environment. So what that limb was doing was carving, but they cut it off, and they took and the part that was rooting was all taken away.
Great.
Yeah. So this limb here had been propped up on these props because they've got a path that goes underneath. Can you see there? And it was cabled and all sorts of things. Anyway, and then it started growing away from this tree outwards to get a canopy. So now you've got this twisting effect on the end of this very, very long limb. So the result of it was in the winds, what, a month and a half ago?
It was April, we were in Montana.
April. It came off and came down to the ground. So the owner was absolutely distraught because they've actually built this house around the tree. Seriously. She just loves this thing.
Yeah, although it's a camper, we are aware it's an invasive species.
Yeah.
But if you were to dare tell this woman that her tree needs to come out, she would take you off by the knees. They literally built their house around this tree, and it's actually historical. I mean, this house that they're in, two presidents back in the early 20s time period have visited this house.
Yeah.
And so this is something that
The tree's staying.
The tree's staying.
The tree's
You
still
could be
going
any
for-
expert in the world and tell her it's invasive and she doesn't care. They wrap about 9,000 lights at Christmas around this tree.
Wow.
It's a big
Yeah.
thing in Winter Park for
Yeah.
this tree.
I actually walked round the end of this, and the epicormic shoots, I mean, they're very breakable. And my arm brushed past one and it broke off, just a little piece. She just looked at me, she was like, it just broke my tree. So anyway, so what do? So I said to her, because she called me, she got back about 1 o'clock at night, this happened. So they moved to the other side of the house. Is the tree going to fall down? I said, no. And I said to her, when you get up in the morning, let me know, tell me if there's any cracking along this stem. So nothing for a week, and then she called me and she said it's cracked. So we came over, and if you look along this limb, it's sort of oval. And that's because all the biomass has been grown on this top side. The only place where it's grown some biomass on the side is the place where it cracked. So the tree had laid biomass down in the area where it had the most strain. And when this came off and dropped 5 feet, that shot way through, split it at the weakest point, which was where the biomass had been accumulated by the tree. And that's why I say, when you read where biomass is laid down on the tree system, that's the point at which the most stress is being applied by the canopy. So this is the first time I've ever used a horizontal scan, because I wanted to see where this split went. So this is the scan. So this is the closest point to the trunk. This is the next down, and this is the furthest point. So I've got my face. Can I move that?
Yeah, if you move that up, you'll see a black bar. Yeah, there you go.
Oh, okay. Let's put it. I'll put it somewhere here. So then you do it as a column, and you can see it start. This is where the stem is. Bear in mind this is horizontal, and it's moving is split diagonally down through it. So we took a chlorophyll fluorescent test on the leaves. You're in the 80s, and for a 300-odd-year-old tree, it's not bad. So no problems there. So what we did, let me get myself out of the way here. Kerry went with the owner to one of the box stores to find the highest rating ratchet straps we could, and we put them around where the split is. And these are about £10,000 strain each. And we got some pads and ratcheted it all together. Because now the hope is eventually, and what we did then was reduce these parts off down to these places here. So we took the rotational force off of the limb being twisted on the ground. And we've left this, and I said to leave it about a month, 6 weeks, because all these fibers have got to settle from their original position to their new position. And sure enough, the limb has actually settled down more. It's moved down more. And then what we're going to do is put a cross support underneath this part here, the split, and just leave it. So a little work in progress.
And the upstairs canopy's gone.
No, that's all there.
At the two red lines.
Oh, this at the end, yes, we took these ends
All
off.
of that's gone.
So we took this force off, but you know, a camphor, I mean, it will grow lots of epicormic
Will it
shoots.
go in?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. But we've taken the twist and the weight off of it. Maybe the wrong way. Okay. I'm going to leave that one. I'm going to show you. Yeah, that was a big reduction I did. This was planted by a husband that passed away a long time ago. It's got a lot of decay, but we reduced it down, and you can see it's started to produce shoots on a much smaller tree. So it's taken the leverage out of that point. Those are the clips that we put on the leaf. So I sort of finished with this one. So this is in Orlando, and we were asked to come over and scan a tree where it had a big part of it fail. And he said, well, whilst you're at it, you know, do you want to scan another couple of trees for us? And so he took us over to where they were doing reinstating a footpath from construction work they'd done. I was looking at the trees and I thought, yeah, I think that one probably would be a good one to scan. There's nothing on the outside of it at all. This is in a thoroughfare in Orlando. There's lots of oak trees. All we found. So that's a heart rot. Come up from the ground, all the way up through that stem of the tree. So that is what is sitting in that tree at the moment, and you wouldn't even know it unless you put a scan on it. There's no outward signs, nothing wrong with the canopy, no bark coming off, nothing.
Is there anything that the owner can do to stop further decay?
So the owner's Orlando City, City of Orlando, but no. So despite what you may be sold, there is nothing you can give a tree that can make it better.
But can you keep it from getting worse by stopping the chemicals, you know, in the ground?
Yes, yeah, all of the above. So the critical thing with a plant or a tree is what it's sitting in, which is soil, but it has to be soil. Because if a tree's got to that size, it's got to that size by virtue of the fact it's had access to everything that it needs. If it's now declining, it's either that is in too small an area to sustain the size it's got to now. Bearing in mind, a tree like that will take 35 to 40 gallons a day up through its system of soil solution. So the replacement of that has got to come from organic matter that is breaking down all the time, water flow that's coming in, new organic matter that's been populated from elsewhere, things that are able to live there. So all of the above. So the best thing you can do is create as close to an optimum soil condition you can for the plant, for the tree. And once it's got access to that, then it will be able to stand a chance of getting back to what it needs. So a surgeon we do a lot of work for, I think he explained it really well. So 2 patients that particular week, one on the Monday, one on the Friday, came in for exactly the same operation. And on the Monday after he'd operated, the guy's doing fine. On the Friday, patient passed away later. Because as he said, as a surgeon, we can't heal you. We surgically repair or remove what it is that's wrong. The thing that heals you is your immune system. And that's down to you. That's your innate immune system you're born with and the acquired one as you go through life. So I always like it, the same as the tree. How good is its system in being able to function, millions of ways that we don't even understand yet. For all its pheromone exchanges, hormonal abilities, pathways, partner trees that it exchanges carbon with. So when one's stressed, it will receive carbon pluses from the other one. All those things that are going on. And on top of that, not this stuff. It's a pretty enclosed area. So where's all that nutrient coming from? You've got 3 big trees using 100 gallons of soil solution a day. So where's the replacement coming from? They can't just sit there and survive on magic. To a certain extent, they will extend underneath the sidewalks, and you've seen the results of that. So yeah, the repair for that normally is to come along, take the concrete sidewalk up, and take an angle grinder and cut the root off, naughty root, and pour more concrete down again. And the root will try and regrow and get back out there again. Which comes back to that original question about the HOAs and planting trees. They just can't survive in a front yard like that. They're going to break your driveway up, break the sidewalk up, and they're going to deplete your lawn of all the things that your other nice plants want. I mean, it's a given. So in the end, you chop so much of it off because it's dropping leaves in the gutter and everywhere else. And then after 30 years, that's it. You're calling someone after you got permission from the HOA to take it down. And then you put a crepe myrtle back.
You might have showed you one with the reduction to the last tree.
Was it the last tree? Kerry knows this better than I do.
Sally, I will say to you, I did my own sort of research. I went and tested building dirt on a house that was being built. The dirt that they put in before they just lay the lawn on top and put all the plants in. It was virtually nothing in it, but it compares to most of the soil tests that I'm doing every day, all the time.
Okay.
It just shows all these new developments.
They have no nutrients, nothing there. Yeah.
Nothing.
Exactly the same. So actually, they will show a client. So this is the building dirt from the house being built next door to me. I went over and did a test on it.
Did you go out in the middle of the night?
I did. I put my little headlamp on and I crawled.
Did you put
I was on camera. Yeah. And then there is, it was one of these building developments in Vieira. And it was almost similar. 5 years after the house was built.
Yeah.
So once it comes out, it's medium that that they get planted in.
Yes.
They start to grow. All they find is
They keep on searching.
Yep. So.
Was this the one you meant?
No, keep going. The last one, the one where you did the reduction on.
No, no,
No,
no.
back,
Oh, that one. Yes, okay.
go back one. Yeah, that one.
Oh, yeah.
Did you see, they can see the reduction?
So,
Oh, the little
Yeah.
screen.
so this is a sand live oak, Quercus geminata. So it's my favourite tree down here.
What is it?
Quercus geminata, the sand live oak. You probably call them scrub oaks.
Yes.
Just fantastic tree. Just as hard as nails. Just sits there in no soil.
But it's scrubby. It doesn't, I mean, it's not really big, right?
No,
Yeah, because it is growing in such a hard.
exactly. So
Yeah.
thigmomorphogenesis is adapted to its environment. It won't grow, it just adapts to it. So this was sitting on no, this is the only tree in this part of this neighborhood all around here. And it just has this little bit of raised,
If you click on that, your screen where you see you and move it up so they can see the
Oh, okay.
reduction. Just pull it up. Can you do it? There you go.
there's Kerry. So it just has this very, very small area. So it's not a big tree, but they absolutely love this tree.
It's actually pretty good for a scrub. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, it's,
It has a lot of-
yeah.
Oh, we've come across some
Yeah.
beautiful sand.
And they put their chairs out underneath here and they have their little barbecue thing set up. So we scanned it because it had a lightning strike and then someone had decided to pour a product in there to close it up. So this was the first year. This is the top and this was the base. So you can see where it starts and it sort of spreads down to the bottom. And then this was the second year, a bit more, and there's a bit more progression. And there's a little bit of cracking, but still, nothing to worry about. So it's at the base of this part here on the front. So this is the compression side. It's the weakest side. And it has this very long limb here. It has a staghorn fern stuck in the join. You can't pull it out, so I couldn't really see.
I bet you love those.
Yeah.
Is that okay to put a staghorn fern in an oak like that?
Yeah, it's better to hang it from it. Once you put it in the join, you're going to get moisture, dirt, fungal spores, bacteria setting up and weakening the joint. So on that basis, I thought, well, if there's a cavity underneath it, all we need is this thing being wrenched off in a wind, if that is compromised. But can you see how the canopy sheds wind? The lovely, lovely oval, and then there's that stuck out there. So what I did was just reduce this down to make it one canopy. So just pulled the edges in so that it's more or less symmetrical, and once you pull that out of the wind, you take the leverage off of that point there. It stiffens it. So the wind can't flex it. If it can't flex it, it can't harm the joint anymore if it's compromised.
It sure is pretty good.
Yeah. So that was the result of that. And there's a whole trailer load just taking off of that little piece. But you literally have to reduce back on every single little leader around that side of the canopy and just blend it back in. I love that type of work, I want to say. Yeah, and that's all the little safety coefficients. We did analysis on it and everything, and I won't do that one because which one am I going? Yeah, okay. There you go. Questions?
Does this just work on part of the trees or does it also work on palm trees?
It does work on palm trees, yes. Yeah.
As you're studying and gathering this information, is it a national program or is there are you comparing it to other areas or is it just local settled Florida?
Well, it's just the trees we touch.
Those trees, are there any areas where the pine is more prominent area wise? And also, is it more prominent where the trees split or where it's possibly been girdled?
The consistency that we find, no matter where we take these results, and we spread over quite a wide range in Florida, the consistency, once, it's very difficult to tell why that initial rot was set up. It could be all sorts of reasons, which is why then we go back and test the second year, and we're looking to see where it's progressed. It's very difficult to say why a tree will accept basal root rot. It's stress of some kind, because if the wood and the root wood and composition is what it should be, it should function normally and not accept that type of pathogen in. Because every cell in a tree has minute fungal spores in it throughout the whole tree. And in the root system, they're a bit like gatekeepers. And they will decide what gets in and what doesn't. It's like the Quake and Aspens in Colorado. They have a particular fungal rhizosphere that doesn't allow anything else to grow in amongst them. And if you put that fungal spore and you find it in the base of oak roots, beech, or anything else, it will chew the thing up. It breaks it down, but not with aspen. So we're beginning to understand that, fungi is not a bad thing. In fact, without it, we can't live. It is tantamount to being able to grow anything. But there are lots of relationships with lots of different species of plants and trees that are related to certain groups of them that will not tolerate others in there for different reasons. I mean, it's a fascinating subject. And when you think that trees and that grow on the planet, everything started from algae and then fungal spores attaching to the algae. So that goes right back, on the Earth, so 800 million years. So really, if you can start looking at those component parts of nature and look at some of the research, not the research papers, but that have been transposed into books, they're much easier to understand. And it's absolutely fascinating.
So you probably read Finding Another Tree and Another Tree. And
I've read parts of them, yeah. There's an author called Jean Brodie, who's a British professor, and she specializes in fungal matter in trees. And she just published a second book, which you can only get that on the Arb Society in the UK, but you can get it. It's a hard book.
can't find it on Amazon.
No, but it is fascinating, and she's very well known. And
The whole concept is just mind-blowing.
it is. It's, I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that as humans, we think that we're at the top of the tree. Which, no pun intended, which is definitely not the case. I mean, there's a lot more money, there's a lot more money coming into the arboricultural industry through private investment and lots of, because climate change is a big thing now. And a lot of companies expanding into it. So private investment is putting money in because they're getting the returns they can't get on traditional things. But that's another story. But it does mean that money is there for research. So a lot more research is being done around the world on things like this to better understand how these columns, how they do work.
How can this tree control whether or not it lets this one grow or die, or
Yeah.
that one grow or die?
Yeah.
This one's okay and that
Yeah.
one's a bit gone.
When you consider man has never replicated wood as a product, ever, not in anything that we make. Not through all our ingenuity, it's never been replicated. And we're still building houses out of it.
I just want to follow up on Chris's question.
Mm.
It sounds like the University of Florida could benefit from you being out in the field and doing these tests. When they had that, when they see patterns, like one geographic area has more whatever, and work with city governments to change, the way that they build or what kind of trees they plant.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great logical observation. I don't know what I can put to that apart from I would agree with you. But I would agree with you. You know, the thing that I try is, I think the danger when you're doing these studies and these instruments are in universities and colleges, that's where the research is done. But how do you access that? How do you even know that research is being done? And how do you know to look for it? Yeah, it might be up on the website, but would you know to look for it? And would you know what chlorophyll fluorescence is to search for it? So it comes down to guys and women in the industry touching trees every day, because they're the ones that are knocking on your door. So if I can make the impact there, that spreads a lot faster. Because unfortunately, you tend to hit slightly, definitely not revolving doors where research is being done. It tends to stay within that. They spin it a bit too fast for you to be able to get your foot in if you wanted to do that. But my real thing is, well, like today. So this is a lot of material, hopefully you haven't heard about. So you each know 10 people. So if there's 50 of you here, that's 500 people that will get to hear that there is something like that out there that could help you better understand what's going on with your tree. And that is a lot more powerful than research staying in a college for one classroom of 22 students that year.
Research papers that are only accessible to academia, because,
Exactly.
you know, unless you're a student with access to
Yeah.
those research papers, you can't.
I used to panic when I first saw research papers and think, you know, how on earth do I read this thing and try and make sense of it until I figured it out. So I just read the first paragraph of what they're trying to do. And then I go to the summary and what they found. I don't mind. I don't care how they've done it. I just want to know what they've found out. And then when I know what they found out, I can then put the search in with it and figure out where else this has been done or what tree it applies to. And it's all that esoteric detail, isn't it, that you don't need, because how much information can you take in?
That's the best use of AI, is to have AI tell us what's the summary of the research.
Exactly. Exactly. So that's it.
Well, thank you.
Wow.
Please.
Can I ask you a quick question?
No.
It's not that. I know it's not an answer. How do you think is the best way to fertilize a really large tree?
You can't.
Basically can't.
No, because its root system can be any up to 3 times the size of its cap, the feeding root. And that feeding root system is regenerating anywhere between 90 and 305 days continuously. So it grabs the nutrient there, once there's no more there, it die back, because it doesn't have to. And then it will grow there, go for the next. And out of those 17 macro and micronutrients, you don't know what it needs at that particular time. So the danger of putting down fertilizer or nutrient, you don't, a lot of it can be left in the soil totally unused. And then that confuses the soil matrix. You get nutrients that start locking themselves up, making themselves unavailable. So the best thing really is a mulch, an organic mulch. And if you put that, you know, around the perimeter of the base of the tree, that gradually will get watered down through into the soil, especially if you're in smaller growing areas, yards. But it has to be organic. And we're working with someone that Sally found for us in Rockledge.
Yeah.
No,
No, I found it.
you found it.
Oh darn, I was gonna take
You're gonna take the credit.
Yeah. But Sally was the one with the, and as you know, the microbial.
Started on there.
Yeah, and then when
We
she
changed
put
a few people over.
the microbial life back in, you know, with the hydrolysis and then organic top dressing. And there's a gentleman here in the county who has it, and it works great. And he do that.
They're just organic hot dress. And then on top of that, put your organic mulch, like.
Yeah, and then every tree you have a mulch bed.
Yeah, and something of that nature. Don't use tires.
Oh, never.
No, I've never
Well, they
seen,
sell it.
Yeah, they do. The rubber mulch.
No,
the way to think of it
No.
is, think about the Amazon rainforest, just in your mind. And you go, does this exist there? And if it doesn't
Heck
exist
no.
there, you don't.
organic, yeah, rubber mulch, it has chemicals in it.
Oh, yeah, but you see that and some of the gardening things, that you see on a PBS or whatever you're looking at. Will occasionally say, I had watched, I don't remember what show it was, but something on PBS. And, this lady had a small farm. And one of the trees was a really large tree. And what they did, and I thought I'd try it, but I didn't do it because I'm lazy. Was, at the drip line, went around and drilled holes into the ground about 2 feet. And then took a PVC pipe. And, she had holes in the PVC pipe at the end. That would be in the ground, and she put in fertilizer directly into that.
Yeah.
And,
Hey,
It's not,
like, yeah, just get the biology in there and then
Yeah.
they grow around the root, so.
she's.
well, you're adding a lot of salt with the fertilizers. I would think adding all those synthetic fertilizers with salt would be.
Yeah.
It was the liquid fertilizer that she was using, but still, you know.
But it was probably still synthetic, probably still salts.
Plastic,
it's-
right? Plastic pipes in the ground.
Yeah, sounds great. Yeah, but I mean, yeah, well, and she, probably had never heard about getting a product that has,
Is there
That might-
anything
might grow.
better than pine bark or, over several years, I put dump trucks full of pine bark in my plantings.
Mhm.
There's a guy called Turf Partners here.
I'm sorry, what?
You know who he is?
Oh, yeah,
so-
Mark,
Yeah, so
Mark-
his mulch is organic,
Is there
Bark-
anything
Turf-
better than that?
best place to go get your.
Okay.
yeah,
But I did
they're
I-
on, well, now, are they still at their other place or just on US one?
Just on US one.
Okay. It just doesn't look like there's
He's never
much there.
He isn't, because he's there out working.
Oh, they're actually doing the work now.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So call him, go get the mulch from him, leave a message.
Turf
He's
Partners.
phoning him, Turf Partners.
Turf Partners.
Turf Partners on US one, north of, Rockledge Garden.
If you guys know where the crematorium was, right outside of Rockledge, that's where it is.
Is that crematorium?
I swear that's where it used to be. You know, they'd have smoke coming out at night. No, I am serious. I am serious.
Crematorium.
Crematorium, and I'm not talking ice cream. Yeah, but no, because I go by there all the time and I see the sign.
Never see him.
Okay, so you just
have to
call.
Call him. Yeah.
But,
and go-
but they don't
go
even
back-
look like they have a bunch of, they don't even look like they have a bunch of stuff, like the compost there or whatever. So maybe he has it in another location and then he can bring it.
Yeah.
I want to see if this looks like anything you know. That's as good as their picture. And it makes me think of an insect, but,
Yeah, it is. It looks like caterpillars.
okay,
That's what it looks like.
okay. Type of caterpillars.
Yeah, that's what it looks like.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's what it
I thought we had to make a picture and I have to show Simon. I'm gonna be here.
Yeah.
I'm gonna pick his brain. Okay. Okay. What tree is it?
Did some trimming on
Could that be a holly? Could that be a pointed leaf? I don't know what it is, doesn't matter. Okay.
Very well. I know. I recognize it.
Never forget to pay.
Wow. I'm flattered.
I never forget a tree.
Oh, there you go. And sometimes he remembers the face.
Often someone will call up.
Lot better because, you know, this class and, we buy all the fertilizer and stuff. And, ours are looking good and our HOA wants us to do all of them.
Oh, there you go. That's no problem.
But anyways, we gotta get together.
Okay, yes. Okay.
Bye, Simon, thank you.
Bye. Okay.
You know, having people come.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Great. I feel bad, it's twice you come out to my house once, most recently I got out of town, and you didn't consider our treated maybe thing, but one time I did trim it. So I'm one of those people that just gets, it takes up the whole front yard.
But no, but he said have it checked out. So, yeah,
Right,
yeah.
but you need to start charging us, we didn't charge. I said, well,
Do you do now?
Hence,
It was
where are
in Cocoa Beach on Westview Lane, not 4th Street South.
you? Okay, yes.
And yeah, so I.
If I come out specifically to there,
Because you did, I was out of town, but he said you looked at it and said, no, it's good for now. And then one time I had you come out, because I thought it needed trimming, and you said, no, it's okay, but wait till it leaves back out, and then call me again, because it was a no.
right,
So, sorry about my.
no,
But yeah, I just want to keep it healthy, because it's literally the whole front yard
yeah,
and over the house, but it has a real low canopy too.
well, that's good.
Yeah.
I mean, really, you know, the best thing ideally is to keep your hands in your pockets.
And that's good?
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
Well, it's very, that was very interesting.
Good, I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Thank you.